Legends and Lattes, an amazing and unique debut novel by Travis Baldree. So it's a combination of two kinds of story, genre if you like, that I personally have never seen combined before. I'm pretty sure they never have been combined before, and I am completely certain that they have never been combined before quite this well. The first kind, if you will, is a fantasy adventure, and more specifically, a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy adventure. To those of us who whiled away many an hour with many kinds of dice and character sheets, the signs are unmistakable. I mean, I have my cred. It's been many years, but I still have them. I think we kind of knew it from the cover and the description, obviously, but the book starts with our protagonist burying a sword in the skull of a horrible, nasty monster and running off with a magical item. And if that wasn't enough, a rundown of her band would do it quite dramatically. You've got the wizard, who's a sarcastic elf. You've got the secondary muscle, who is a dwarf. You've got the cleric, who is a particular type of elf, probably never seen outside of D&D. And you've got the crafty gnome, who is a lockpick, etc. So, and likes knives. It's as D&D a band as anyone who's an aficionado has ever seen. The long-term role player is instantly familiar with them, knows them all, is comfortable in the scenario, and is completely and utterly subconsciously certain that they all met in a tavern long ago. So the second kind of book this is a cozy fiction, and those have been emerging as a very popular genre. I've read a few of them. They're not my favorite genre, but I don't mind them. They're comforting at the time. You've got a person, and it's usually a female, but not always. They've had a breakup, or a sea change, or a divorce, or a life-changing experience, cancer, whatever, and they may be escaping something horrible that isn't found out till the last few chapters, whatever. They arrive in a new location to open a cafe, flower shop, bookshop, gift shop, insert random cozy shop here. And they usually do it in a shabby building that they absolutely fall in love with, and then they have to do it up because home renovation's a big thing in the 2020s as well. They make friends, they win local hearts along the way, they find their community. There may be a romance. Romance is optional. Never a big part of it. So that, ta-da, is the cozy novel. And I would never have thought of combining the two. I'm pretty sure no one else ever thought of combining the two, because they're each such a strong genre in themselves. But here we have, right on the cover, Viv the orc with the slightly magical sword, the primary muscle in her group. She is getting tired of the adventuring lifestyle. She's getting a bad back. She's had a few too many injuries. And she's a bit bored with the whole thing. She's done her research in the various libraries that are given a different name in D&D worlds. And she has saved up her gold and her gems and her platinum for a long time. So with her research, she chooses a particular town based on its ley lines, if you will. And she finds a location, coffee beans and a coffee machine on order from the gnomes from whom we find that she first learnt about coffee. She's all set to buy the abandoned building, do it up, and set up the first coffee shop the city of, is it Thule? It might be Thule. Thune, that's it, Thune. First coffee shop the city of Thune has ever seen. And it's the first because no one has ever heard of coffee. So that's a problem. Other problems appear along the way. You've got rebuilding the collapsing livery stable into a cafe, which is solved by finding this amazing craftsman, which Viv helps him rebuild the building into this inner vision that she's got. The local craftsman is an unappreciated in his amazingness because of his species, but Viv doesn't care much about species. Being an orc, she's got her own species problems. There's a local mafiosa, and their protection money racket has to be dealt with, and that's dealt with by reconnecting with her old band of adventurers, most of whom she's very friendly with, except for one who proves the enemy. There has to be an enemy. There are other problems and there's other solutions that crop up along the way, but at the end of the day, the problems are everyday ones that everyday people deal with if they're setting up a business or moving to a new place. That's, well, at least if you include angry elf wizards and dire cats every day, they're everyday problems. There's enough not every day to make it charming, and there's enough every day to make it cozy. Again, those two kinds of novel, who would ever have thought they could blend so well? Anyway, whatever else, the importance of friends and community is the key message of this book, if it even has a message, and I'm not sure that it ever aimed to have a message. I think the message is just incidental to the actual story and the author. The other message, of course, is the importance of coffee. Coffee is very, very important. Half a bit for black, 1 full bit for latte, and then other things add in along the way. It occurs to them to put ice in their coffee, which is, inventiveness, okay? And they're accompanied by cinnamon scrolls once they discover an amazing master baker who is a ratkin and thus also unappreciated. And this is the way in which Viv slowly gathers around her friends and her community. Mostly by species underappreciation. So, this book is charming because Viv's coffee shop is exactly the coffee shop I personally wish was around the corner from me. And at the back there's a little interview with the author where he talks about the fact that there used to be a coffee shop, a Cuban coffee shop around the corner from him and his family that was, if not Viv's coffee shop, at least had shared enough with it that it was a bit of an inspiration for, well, I wish it was around the corner from me. This is the coffee shop that many of us dream of, essentially. And I would like to go in and have a cup of bean water, as Cal calls it. At least he calls it that until he's tasted it. Because coffee is addictive. So, criticisms that I've heard for this book tend to be either from people who have never played D&D, such as, the magic system is never explained. Wrong. It's been explained by all the Forgotten Realms books in existence. You just need to read more. The cover was unappealing. Okay. Long-term friend never knew that they didn't roleplay until they said this cover was unappealing. Because I think the cover's gorgeous. The other criticisms tend to come from people who are very, very heavily into D&D but don't have a sense of humour. So this is very much the book for the D&D players who have grown up and have a sense of humour. When you first discover D&D when you're 14 or 15 and you are very, very into it in a very, very serious and I must memorise every monster in the monster book manual way, this is maybe a bit light-hearted for them. Maybe not, many of them have a sense of humour. But for me personally, I have only one complaint with this entire book, and it's a bit teeny tiny complaint. Tiny. And very nerdy. Very, very nerdy. On page 127, we have the Master Baker, the Ratkin, dicing cardamom pods. Very fine before crushing them. Dude, Travis, you can no more dice cardamom pods than you can dice coffee beans. They just aren't amenable to it. What you do is you open the pod, you get out the tiny, tiny seeds, and then you crush them, which the Ratkin does later. But this argument is very reminiscent of ones that I used to get into D&D, during D&D games, by the way, because D&D borrows everything. There's spices in there that people have never heard of. There's myths that no one's ever heard of. People who never played totally underestimate how jam-packed full of information from how many sources D&D really is. And when I was at my uni days, if I ever met a really, really young man He looked like he'd been born and bred a cane farmer, and he used the word scrolls. Ah, D&D. It's a great system. I do kind of miss it, but I'm missing that time of my life as much as anything. So, aside from that tiny quibble, because quibbling is as lifeblood to me, so I quibble. Other than that, this book filled every hope and expectation I had for it, and my hopes were high. I was expecting to be disappointed. I've been hearing about this book, I've been reading about this book, I've been seeing reviews of this book ever since it came out, and I think it first came out in 2020, and it didn't come out as a book, it came out as electronic media. This was almost going to be the book which made me move away from my long-term refusal to read books electronically for fun. I wanted it so badly, but I moved on. There's other books in the world, and then finally a publishing house saw the light, and here it is in paper book form on my bookshelf, available to be reread whenever I want to reread it, because I will. There's no doubt about that. This is probably my favourite ever cozy book. I don't mind cozy genre, but they're usually not that substantial. They don't have much to bring you back to them. You've read it and it's done. This one was marvellous, and it was heartwarming. And it made me feel happy and giggly, and it had little adventures, but nothing too threatening. And it was everything that one could wish for from a book. If you're in the face of this book. Now that I think about it, I can think of one other book that did try a little bit to combine. Was it Terry Brooks who wrote Magic Kingdom for Sale Sold? That did that kind of, but it wasn't cozy. It was more D&D adventure type. And though it had a few similar kinds of messages. New favourite book. As a bonus, in paper format, you've got that little interview with the author that I told you about. An interview with Travis Baldree, which is cool. I don't often read interviews with authors, actually. I think the book needs to stand on its own, but I was actually fascinated and intrigued enough to read this one. And there's also a Legends and Lattes story at the back, which is called Pages to Fill, which I think is a kind of brilliant name under the circumstances. That's a story from before, when Viv gave up the adventuring. She's in a town on a little mission with her band of adventurers, and this is where she is really introduced to libraries by the gnome in her party, Galena, which is where she starts doing her investigation. And it is also, oh well, spoiler, whatever. It's also, at the end, shows Viv's first introduction to coffee. Marvellously addictive substance. But she was not only addicted to the coffee, she was addicted to the whole notion of the coffee shop and the coziness and that home away from home feeling. Only for Viv, it doesn't become home away from home. It becomes her total home. And good on you, Viv. Good on you, Travis. You both made me very happy for a couple of days, and thank you very much for writing this book. You'll never watch this. Who am I kidding? But thank you very much for writing this book anyway.